Let's talk lackeys in the Ubiquity role-playing system. This will be a new entry in the On-Again, Off-Again series about different aspects of the Ubiquity role-playing system as created by Exile Game Studio for Hollow Earth Expedition and thankfully brought to us in a variety of other exciting games as well. Now recently we've been playing All for One Regime Diabolique, which has sparked some comments about the game system in our live plays, and that's really the source of this particular video. If we were going to play the game, if we were going to do All for One Regime Diabolique, or if we were going to play Leagues of Adventure, which also features lackeys, otherwise called henchmen, which are based on the followers resource in the game, how would we do it? How would we make that happen? So this video will take a look at, as an overview, the followers resource, bringing followers of whatever type into play in whatever game, and I guess that will be enough. Assigning the followers trait to a player character in Ubiquity is really only a part of games put out by AAA games. The musketeers in All for One Regime Diabolique, they get lackeys as a normal part of character creation. No gentleman is without a proper lackey. This is drawn directly from the books, and so it's a part of character creation. Likewise, in Leagues of Adventure and its spin-off games, Leagues of Gothic Horror and Leagues of Cthulhu, you'll find this same attitude, right? No one of this social status is properly without someone who takes care of the day-to-day things, or at the very least protects you from the day-to-day things. So it's an essential part of character creation in those games. It's not in the others, at least so far. However, the followers trait is represented in Ubiquity as a standard rule, meaning at any point in any game, you may find someone has the desire to hire someone or is building a gang or this sort of thing. Now, the followers resource also handles animal companions. So let's start out this video with some examples. What is a follower? It's very clearly described in All for One Regime Diabolique who the lackey is. Similarly, in Leagues of Adventure, we have a very clear sense of what kind of people are henchmen. In the other games, we might think of Short Round in the Indiana Jones movies, in the Temple of Doom. We might think of Short Round as a follower. Now, arguments could be made to have him be a variety of other things, but from the point of view of the follower, he's in the scene because of the character. He's dependent on the character, and he contributes something to the character in a refined area. He has a certain subset of skills which can complement the skills of the main character. All right, so that's kind of the viewpoint of what the follower is. Now, if we apply this template to some other films, we could take a look at Mad Max. And there, in The Road Warrior, the second Mad Max film, we could look at Dog. Right? Dog similarly functions as a follower. He's an extension of the character's abilities. He allows the character to do more things at the same time, and he reinforces a certain set of skills. So we can think of Dog as a follower. But we could take this analogy further and say that also the pilot character, the skinny blonde guy whose name escapes me right now, he also could be portrayed as a follower. Now, like I said earlier, an argument could be made that this could be another player character. It doesn't have to be. This character could easily be seen as a follower. Right? Again, he's in the scene mainly because Max requires him to be there. He provides information and ultimately support for Max, and for most of the film at least is entirely dependent on him. So like I say, there's a strong argument that he's not a follower, but you could see how in a small group you could present this character in that way. Another animal example would be the Lone Ranger and Tonto. Both of these are player characters. Tonto is not a follower of the Lone Ranger. They are partners, equal partners in their venture. But both of them have these highly trained, very intelligent, very capable steeds. Their horses, Silver and Scout, which could be well represented by the follower's trait. More than just a piece of equipment, more than just an animal in the scene. They are a cut above that. Now, how this is represented, how the follower's trait or the follower's resource represents the characteristics, allows you to have a certain amount of shorthand in how they are presented, which will become useful when we talk about portraying them in a scene. But similar to allies and patron, the follower's resource is done in levels. Each level of the resource provides a certain number of points for attributes and skills, as well as the existence or non-existence of things like talents and resources. Improvement of a follower requires improving the resource. You don't take experience points and apply them to the follower, to the lackey, or to the henchman. You apply them to the resource. These experience points are from the player character. So the player is assigning the experience that they earned between their main player character and any followers that they might have to raise the follower's resource. Improving a resource in Ubiquity, like improving a talent in Ubiquity, costs 15 experience points. This is one of the more expensive things that you can do in experience points expenditures in the game, mostly because it's a flat rate. It will always be 15 experience points. So when you're first starting out, those 15 experience points are maybe you feel are desperately needed somewhere else. But as you start to improve the character and their attributes grow more and more expensive each time they're improved, and their skills become more and more expensive each time they're improved, that 15 points for improving a resource starts to look much more attractive. So there are a lot of different ways to approach improving your followers. You might start a small bank, put in 1 or 2 points every time you earn experience for the future improvement of your lackey, or for the opening up of opportunities to recruit another follower, or likewise to improve your small group of followers. However you choose to administer it, it will cost 15 experience points every time. But that investment of 15 experience points will earn you a global improvement of all of that follower's abilities. Their attributes may increase, their number of skill points may increase, their access to talents and resources may increase. So it's kind of a shock. It's a real investment. It's a significant consideration. It has distinct effects. If, in play, a player chooses to use their experience points to acquire the follower's resource or to improve it, what is it that they're actually getting or improving? I'm going to draw my examples from All for One and from Leagues of Adventure. In these games, they have fully embraced the idea of the zero-level something, which is a feature of Ubiquity, which appeared in Mysteries of the Hollow Earth and Secrets of the Surface World, as I've mentioned, but doesn't always penetrate as deeply into the entire presentation of the game as it did in these two games. So, if during character creation you have a zero-level lackey or a zero-level henchman, what do you get? Well, you get a character who is designed to be a secondary character, who is intended to be present at all times or sent off doing something specific, always available to assist the character. That really should be thought of as a part of the character, an expression of the character's ability to affect the world. So, you get a character who is very briefly described. They have a flaw. They have 9 points for attributes. They have 5 points for skills, and they have no access to talents and resources. So at 0 level, that's what you get. You also get this at level 1. However, at level 1, you have the option to have 2 lackeys built that way, or to have that 1 lackey instead have 12 points in attributes, 10 points in skills, and a talent or a resource. It's a significant improvement. And each time the level is increased, the capability of the follower is improved by 3 attribute points, by 5 skill points, and by 1 talent or resource. That means that a level 2 follower is comparable to a starting character. So, with those 9 attribute points and with those 5 skill points, what you're trying to do is to create a character who does have that very specific focus, right? The reason for why they were hired. And ideally, as you create them, you'll be thinking of the ways that they will interact with the person that has retained them. So the teamwork bonus will be in evidence. That will be a normal way to do it. So this character is capable of going off with that skill that's important to the player character, go off and do that remotely, or can work in concert with the player character to improve their ability to get stuff done. This is particularly useful in Leagues of Adventure for weird science invention, and it's extremely helpful in All for One for things like first aid on the field of battle and that sort of thing. However, this character in these 2 games is also what separates gentlemen from men, from nobility from commoners. It is the lackey and the henchman that will go out and take care of the day-to-day things, who will handle the money, who will make sure there's a place to live and there's food in it, and that sort of thing. In the other games outside of All for One and Leagues of Adventure, that might be much less important. Once you have a resource like this in play, either as a person or as an animal companion, their role in the campaign is to enhance and support the player character. But they're also there to expand the boundaries of the world. There'll be more perspectives present in a scene. There'll be more personalities present in a scene, and the world can seem much richer and much bigger as a result. Now, these resources are defined primarily by having an occupation, the reason for which they were hired, or the reason for which they were trained, and they will have a flaw. And those 2 things are the linchpin on which you will base the portrayal of the character. Now, this resource is ultimately in the hands of the game master to adjudicate. But in the specific cases of lackeys and henchmen, and this really is good advice to follow anytime there's a follower resource present in any of the games, it should be played by one of the other players. This allows you to have direct role-played conversations between employer and employee, and ensures that these personalities are out there. You don't wind up with the lackey being used more like gear, right? I have my lackey do this, and then that is assumed to happen, right? There's no interaction with them. And it also allows for conflict. Not conflict meaning the lackey won't do what you want them to do, but conflict meaning you still have to treat them like people. You still have to treat them well. You still need to have some kind of relationship. And it's in relationships that games take on depth and interest. So by having each person at the table playing the follower of someone else at the table, you get that. And it's pretty easy. The template for followers really is a shorthand version of a full-on character. You have far fewer points, you have your flaw, and you have your occupation up front, and you're ready to go. If you suddenly need to inject a follower-type character into the game, then AAA certainly has you covered. All of the, like Richelieu's guides to something, or the Globetrotters guides to something else, they all have long lists of lackeys and henchpeople within them. So, very quickly recruiting one is easy, and then all you need to do is imbue it with a distinct personality. And that can be left to the first person who plays them at the table, and then everyone else simply follows that role. Because the follower doesn't really need to be assigned to the same person all the time. And there may be cases where the follower is present, but the character is not. And then, the owner of that particular lackey resource or follower resource could portray them in a scene. Right. There are many funny situations throughout the D'Artagnan romances where it's just the followers together getting into trouble. And there's no reason why you can't inject that kind of scene into your own games, all for one or not. So, let's review some of the stuff about followers. So having a follower means purchasing the follower resource. This will be a part of normal character creation for All for One and for all of the Leagues of X games. It's not a normal part of character creation for the other games that use Ubiquity. However, it is available for all of them. It's a standard part of the rules. To improve a follower or to increase the number of followers, you need to raise that resource trait. Each time you raise it, you can either improve the quality of the followers or improve the number of the followers. And it will go in the same type of progression that you are used to. 9, 12, 15, and so on for attributes. And the numbers will be 2, 4, and onward. So you can have quite a collection of followers if you choose, or you can be working with some very highly skilled followers that are able to keep up with you in your dangerous investigation of these adventurous worlds. Portraying followers really is the ultimate responsibility of the game master, but that means that they can assign a follower to anyone at the table, including the person whose follower it is, if their own character didn't happen to be in that scene. And this can really increase the fun and depth of your setting. Lackeys are represented by flaws and occupations, so it's quite easy to get a hook into what they're interested in and how they're portrayed. And they really exist for that specific occupation and those specific skills and how they interact with their employers' skills. This type of play, with everybody at the table playing the servants or retainers or bodyguards or whatever of all the other people at the table, I've grown to call this troupe-style play, based on my exposure to games like Ars Magica, which is now with Atlas Games, and the old World of Darkness game, Wraith the Oblivion. They both used this style of play to great effect. Now, of course, it predates these particular games, going all the way back to the first role-playing game. We have our group of stalwart adventurers going into their subterranean adventures, backed up by a very large number of henchpeople, people with very specific skills who may or may not have had well-developed personalities and from whom you may have recruited replacement adventurers should the need arise. Traveling with this entourage of people is not new to gaming. Making use of it is something that comes and goes in fashion. Some people are a little intimidated by the idea of taking on the role of more than one character in a scene. Don't worry about it. It's fun. At least consider giving it a try. And this followers resource is a great way to do just that. So let's close out the video with some tips about actually making that happen. Okay. The lackeys themselves, or the followers themselves, have a very small footprint on paper. As I mentioned earlier, they're just an occupation, a flaw, and then a small number of points. So if necessary, a small card with that information on it could be passed out to whichever one of the players is being called upon to portray that particular follower right now. I recommend using the same player for the same follower as often as you can, but to also remember to portray them as the game master from time to time, to keep them within the bounds of what it is that is defining that particular relationship. Likely you are going to be working with each of the players, that you, the game masters, are going to be designing each of the followers. And so to keep the portrayal true to what it was that the original player had in mind when they decided to go for a follower resource, and when you built the character initially to meet that need but also be interesting, you should remember to portray them from time to time. Certainly so that they don't become a doormat and do whatever as if they weren't a living, breathing person of their own, but also just to, keep your hand in, because there are going to be times when you have to portray the follower because everybody else is too busy in the middle of something else. Now, a great example of this would be all the player characters are involved in some kind of horrible conflagration. The lackeys are not supposed to be there, and yet one of them arrives to save the day or whatever. You'll need to portray them as convincingly as the person who normally does. So, as we mentioned, each of the lackeys has a flaw. This is the thing which, under pressure, comes out. This is the thing which, under pressure, will earn them style. Followers can earn style, and we want them to. Now, I'll give you an example from our current campaign. I'm playing a musketeer. I'm playing a musketeer who's living under an assumed identity, who's being hunted by his noble family, and he has this particular lackey named Claude, who is famous for his ability to ferret out secrets and, listen to all of the rumors and ascertain the truth behind them, right? So, Claude has that particular role. He handles the day-to-day living arrangements for my character, Martin. But little by little, piece by piece, he's making his way through the court and through the streets of Paris, learning what he can, learning all he can in order to support my character, Martin's motivation, right, to gain control of the very family that's hunting him. Why is he doing this? Well, that's tied actually to his flaw, because you wouldn't know it from that description. But Claude is a coward. And if you watch through the campaign very carefully, and you can, it's available, if you watch through very carefully, Claude is never, ever, anywhere near the action or the danger. Now, he'll very quickly show up as soon as the danger is over. He's one of the first to arrive when we need rescue or we need a piece of information. But he's always leaving the scene of action, never coming forward into it. Whereas the drunkard Jacques, who supports the character of Philippe, played by Ivan Mike, 1968, he's wherever. He doesn't particularly care. Claude is a coward. And that defines how he is portrayed and why he works so hard to ferret out all of these secrets. And each time he's being portrayed, he takes on more and more depth. He's not a star of the campaign, but he's definitely one of its lights. So I hope this video has been helpful, or at least sparked some ideas. If you haven't tried out using followers in the game, definitely consider it. If you haven't tried playing All for One or Leagues of Adventure, this is just one of the many, many reasons why these games are so much fun to play.